Hi all, welcome to Cracku's video series. I'm Sayali Ma'am. So in this video, I'll be discussing DashCAT-1. Those who have taken it would already know it is slightly on the difficult side, especially the quant section and the LRDI section. The verbal section was on the easier side. So overall, I feel that this is a slightly difficult mock. A difficult mock, when you're just starting preparation, it might come as a shock to you. But don't worry, we'll be helping you through the process from DashCAT-1 to DashCAT-15 to get to a much higher percentile, a much better percentile, and on actual CAT where you will do very, very well. So if you have scored slightly below expectations, don't worry, this is a difficult mock and you're at the start of your journey. So keeping those two things in mind, let's get started. We'll go through each of the sections and I'll tell you what could have been different, what should have been your strategy. Firstly for this mock, as well as in general, what should be your strategy as such. So over here, this quant section was definitely a difficult section. There were 3 easy questions, there were 7 hard questions. So generally the reverse is 2. So 7 are easy, 3 are hard, 12 are moderate. So here there were very few easy questions, there were many hard questions. And generally what happens is that these 7 hard questions, it's not like, okay, I'll leave those 7, I'll do well in the remaining 15 questions. That doesn't happen. What happens is those 7 questions, you get stuck in them. And instead of spending like 2-3 minutes solving them, they end up taking 5 minutes. And that is where your sectional attempt kind of goes off, because you get stuck in these time-sink difficult questions which take too much of your time. So always remember, one of the big reasons why difficult sections are difficult, not because that every question is difficult, but when the hard question comes, if you do not immediately reject it and move to an easier question, what is going to happen is that the 15 questions that were doable, you were not going to actually finish those 15 questions. You are going to end up wasting too much time in the questions which you should have left. In such kind of sections, question selection becomes extremely important. Okay. Now let's take a look at where the easy questions were from, where the moderate questions were from, where the hard questions were from. So generally, I always say that attempt arithmetic. Most of the easy questions come from arithmetic because there is a scope for easy questions there. Most of the moderate questions also come from arithmetic, and if you put all of it together, much of your attempt would be solid if you do well in arithmetic. Here, 4 hard questions came from arithmetic, and 5 of them were easy to moderate, 4 were hard. So 9 questions from this, it would have been difficult to dismiss some of the questions because you would be like, okay, I can't leave arithmetic because arithmetic is one of my stronger points, or arithmetic is something that I definitely know. So in such questions, the difficult arithmetic questions are easy to spot. How do you spot the hard arithmetic questions? Generally, they are on the longer side. They'll require, like, the time, speed and distance will involve multiple comings and goings, or it will be a longer question. So whenever you see a longer arithmetic question from time and work, time, speed and distance, you should immediately know, maybe I shouldn't do this in my first read through because this is going to take me more than 4 minutes for sure. And if it is taking me more than 4 minutes, I should come back to it later. So just mark for review and go ahead. That is what you should remember next time when you are doing your mocks. If you see a time and work or time, speed, distance question which is on the longer side, even mixtures questions which are on the longer side, they are generally time consuming and you should just mark them for review and move forward. The reason for that is that I don't want you to miss these 5 easy moderate questions, but these 4 questions are going to take more than forget 12 minutes. These can easily take up 20 minutes, which is half of your sectional time as such. So rather than spending a lot of time doing this, just move on to geometry, algebra, etc. Because in say in PNC you had 1 easy question. In modern maths you had logarithms questions were moderate. If you weren't completely tired by the time you solve these 4 hard questions, these were extremely doable. I have put them as 2 moderate questions, but they were actually not as difficult. Many people were not able to solve it because they came later on in the section, but they were easier than they looked as such. If you actually looked at them with fresh eyes, I'm sure you could have solved these much faster than you would have solved these as such. So what you should do is, whenever you see a arithmetic question, a time, speed, distance question, a mixtures question, which is like a paragraph and which involves multiple things. Okay, first I put this mixture into this, then this mixture into this mixture into this, you should say, wait, I'll go to another question, because there you should know that it is not going to be solved under 4 minutes. Geometry, there were 4 moderate and 1 hard questions. I generally felt the geometry questions were doable. They were not difficult, especially the 4 moderate were essentially exactly CAT level as such. This is the level of questions that actually come from geometry in CAT. So there is no escaping from these kind of questions. Even the algebra questions were moderate to hard. People struggled with it, but I feel what happened more is that very few people had time for these questions. That is why they found it difficult to solve them. Because if you actually spend 20 minutes over here or a lot of time over here, you would end up with very little time to solve algebra. So overall, algebra and geometry were marked as harder questions, but they were not as hard. Especially if you consider these 4 hard questions, they were much easier than those hard questions as such. So whenever you see that, okay, arithmetic is unnecessarily hard, go to algebra, go to geometry, they won't be as difficult. In this question, this one number system question was there, which was involving enumeration. You had to enumerate cases. And whenever something of that sort is there, you should immediately realize that if I have to enumerate many cases, this is going to take me time. So this was a massive time sink. If you haven't seen my attempt, please see my attempt and you will see that these 4 hard questions and this one hard question ate up so much time. Disproportionate amount of time, and I could have done much better in this section had I not actually attempted these 5 questions. If I had skipped, my attempt would have been entirely different. So the important thing to remember in this particular section was that skipping questions is also a skill. It is a very important skill, and the value of this skill becomes very, very important when the sectional is harder than you expect. In those kind of sectionals, it is very important to say, this is a harder question, I need to skip this. This is a harder question, I need to skip this. You should be confident. I'll come back to it later. I'm not like saying that I won't solve it. But you should be confident that there are easier questions down the line, and after doing them only you should come over here. With PNC and probability, there was one easy question, one easy moderate question. Modern maths, I felt both questions were like very doable. This easy question was a direct formula application. So if you knew the formula, you would take less than a minute to actually solve this. So all of these there were easier questions, there were moderate questions. But essentially, it would be a question of whether you got to see them or not, because the harder questions would take up all your time. And it is tempting, okay? It is psychologically difficult for a lot of people to leave questions. I'm sure a lot of good students also struggled in this section. So what we saw was that there was a compression of scores. See, the moderate students or average students would feel that, okay, I can't do this question, they would move ahead. But a good student would feel like, how can I not do an arithmetic question? I'll try to do it. And then they would make a mistake as such. So there was a compression of scores in this particular section because of that tendency to not leave questions. So don't have that tendency that I will attempt or solve every question. You can solve every question, but just not in the first go. In the first go, solve the easy moderate questions. Do not insist on solving the hard questions in the first go. Okay, so this was the quant analysis, the LRDI analysis. Again, this was a difficult section as such, but essentially the thing over here was that there were 2 difficult sets. So your sectional attempt could have been okay. See, what I always tell, which I have seen in many CATs, and the last CAT I did not follow my own advice, but it was true even in that particular CAT, was that always solve the chart set. The chart set is the easiest set of the lot. Always whenever there are 4 sets, one set will be either table based or chart based, and whenever there is that easy DI table based or chart based set, solve it. It is the easiest of the lot. You will get those 15 marks for sure, and that is a big deal. Okay, you have 15 marks for sure, you are clearing the cutoff at 15. So always solve the chart set. There was one easy chart set which it looked very lengthy. Okay, so what happens many times is that you see these small sets, okay, this much description, you are tempted to solve them. You see the chart set, it is this much description, you feel that no, this is too long, I won't solve it. But that description of this much will take you 15 minutes to solve. This description, which is also taking you 10-12 minutes, you will solve it, you will get all answers correct. Here, with every question, you have to solve for 5 minutes. That is the big difference. So over here, whenever you have like a small description, don't be fooled by that. That doesn't necessarily mean that the set will take lesser time to solve. And not if you see a charts question which has like a description of this big, it doesn't mean that it is going to take a lot of time to solve. Okay, so do not go by the length of the set. This set was fairly easy, it was very doable, and 15 marks could have been yours. Over here, then you have the difficult DI set based on number system. So this is about the subsling, supersling as such. See, I would say that this set is difficult. But once you got the logic, because the set is this much, the questions are this much, each of the questions had to individually be solved. But the solving time was not much. So if you got the logic, and that's a big if, you could score all the questions correct fairly quickly. So this would take you a bare minimum of 10 to 12 minutes. But you could solve this under 10 minutes. But the big if is getting the questions correct and understanding the set properly. Because in such questions, what happens is that you try to solve, you get some answer, but the answer is wrong because your logic or your understanding of that particular question is slightly wrong. So in such cases, I would say that this is a risky set to attempt. But if you are somebody who is very good at DILR, you can definitely attempt it. You will solve it also very quickly, and that would give you the ability to solve 3+ sets, because otherwise solving 3 sets is difficult given that there are only 40 minutes. The only way you can actually solve 3 sets or so is if you solve something under 10 minutes, and this is something that you could potentially solve under 10 minutes as such, because while difficult, it was not time consuming. Okay. There was one moderate set based on quant and arrangement. This set was very close to the kind of set we actually saw in CAT 2023. If you gave CAT 2023 slot 3, I think, you had a similar set as such, which was the most difficult set of that particular slot. This is an easier version of it. This is not as difficult as that set. But again, a lot of people struggle there. A lot of people struggled here also, but it is actually a fairly simple set. What happens is that because this is not a, so you are used to arrangement, right? You are used to arrangement in a row, in a column, around a circle, in a table. Those kind of arrangements, generally you get perfect arrangements. Whenever there are no perfect arrangements or there are multiple cases, there is this growing fear inside of you that I'm going somewhere wrong. Here you got multiple cases with the arrangement, and then a lot of people would have felt that, okay, I'm going somewhere wrong, maybe I'm not getting the answer. How is it possible that I'm getting so many multiple cases? Or people just stop because they find nothing more to go on, and they will basically be that, okay, how do I further actually go ahead, because I'm getting multiple cases, I'm getting multiple answers. This clearly is not a valid answer as such, a valid way of arrangement. So essentially over here, it was not difficult. It was a fairly small set, short set, but it gave multiple arrangements, and because it gave multiple arrangements, that is where the difficulty came from. Otherwise, it was a simple arrangement set. If there was only one possible solution, it would have been like super simple set, under 10 minutes. Because there was multiple cases possible, this became a slightly difficult set, because even your confidence gets a battering from that. If you get one answer, you feel very confident. If you get multiple cases, you feel very like circumspect about the answer. You feel that, okay, maybe I have not actually solved the set. Maybe let me see, did I miss a condition? Did I forget to see a particular condition? Did I do something wrong? So it was just like that. This was actually an easy set, slightly more difficult because multiple cases are possible. So over here, what I would have said is that these 2 sets are what you should have attempted. These would be the perfect sets as such. This set and this set are slightly difficult. See, the games and tournament set. What is the case with the games and tournament set is that if you know seeding, you know that it is easy to solve, it is doable as also. But the issue with the games and tournament set is that it requires a lot of solving, a lot of time to solve. It is going to take you at least 15 minutes to solve this particular set, and that is where the time pressure starts to build. Because if you attempted this set in the first, if that was the first set that you attempted, you would have been probably at 20 minutes, you might have been still not finishing most of the answers and all. So over here, this would have caused you some amount of this would have scared you as such. So over here, I would have said the best sets to attempt would be the chart set and the quant arrangement set. The other 2 sets are the difficult sets. They should have been skipped as such. So this was a difficult section, and again, set selection is also very important over here. As always, I will always recommend go for the chart set. You will not regret if you go for the chart set. The VARC section was on the easier side. There were 2 RCs which were fairly easy. I will say this is moderate, but it was also, there was one question which was very easy in it, one question which was hard, 2 questions which are moderate. In analytical RC, this was also easy. There were 2 easy questions, 1 moderate, 1 hard question. Here there were 2 easy questions, 2 medium questions. So this scientific RC on temptation and this RC on analytical RC on business capex, both were very doable. And this RC which is there on Russia-Ukraine conflict, essentially it was a persuasive RC, and it was something which was relevant, something which you would have been reading already as such. So you would have had some idea of what is being discussed. Now, essentially what happened over here, which I believe a lot of students tripped up, is that this was a persuasive RC, but it was disguised as an informative one. But it was very thinly disguised as an informative one, because the author was clearly making the case for Ukraine not pushing to recapture certain parts that had been ceded to Russia. So essentially he was trying to persuade, he was giving a lot of information, because he was inundating you with information. You could have gotten confused and said this is an informative RC, and I'll answer it with that kind of informative RC kind of outlook. But it was a persuasive RC. So whenever it's a persuasive RC, the answers become that he's trying to persuade you to do this. What does he feel? He feels that you should not go back and recapture those territories, etc., etc. Then once you understand and have the right lens on, finding the options becomes easier. So this was not a difficult RC set per se, in the sense the subject was not difficult, the subject was familiar, the questions were not difficult, but the only difference is that the tone was difficult to capture. Once you realize that the tone is persuasive, the answers would be easy. If you felt that the tone was informative, the answers would be, you'd go wrong in marking the answers as such. Over here, there were two easy sets. Again, the scoring was fairly well over here. So I assume that essentially people are very comfortable with scientific RCs, fact-based RCs. But when students are confronted with opinion articles or kind of articles which require a little bit of analysis, that is where you're stumbling. So good going with the two sets where most people were able to answer the questions. I feel over here also with some practice, it's easy. All four would have been very doable by most of the students as such. The VA part was slightly harder, because I won't say it was harder, because the accuracy in VA is generally low. In CAT also it is generally low. So always remember, most of your marks are going to come from the RC section. Very few of your marks are going to come from the VA section. So you have 24 questions, 16 questions from RC, 8 questions from VA. This is going to give you 75% of your marks. This is going to give you less than 25% of your marks. Always remember. The reason is that while this is 2/3, 1/3, here your accuracy will be much higher than your accuracy over here. The reason for that is because the accuracy in para-jumbles is very low. The accuracy in para-completion also tends to be on the lower side. Para-summary accuracy is close to your RC accuracy. So in general, VA-RC accuracy tends to be low, and if you see even like the trends of your marks which come from VA, how many come from RC, generally you will see that VA is not a very reliable source of marks. RC is a much reliable source of marks, so always make sure that you attempt as many RCs as possible. There are some people who are exceptions to this rule. Generally, most students are that most marks come from RC. For some students, more marks come from VA. For those, I would say definitely attempt all VA questions, because if you're good at something, you should definitely do it. But for a lot of students, RC is the source of marks, so make sure that you do all 4 RC sets and then go to the VA questions. Then go to the para summary, then go to the para jumbles and para completion. Okay, so this was DashCAT-1. I know this was on the tougher side. I know a lot of students struggle. If you see my attempt, even I struggled. But the point is not that you should get the as high a mock score as possible, because after that it's like your wake up call to start preparing. It is the point at which you realize that appearing for CAT is serious business, and you need to make sure that you start preparing seriously. So forget the marks. Take the learnings from this particular DashCAT, what you should do, what should your strategy be, what mistakes you should not make in set selection, in question selection, in quant question selection also. So this is basically DashCAT-1, and I'll see you with the DashCAT-2 analysis also.